whispers in the garden. The string quartet played Vivaldi as waiters in white gloves wove through clusters of Silicon Valley's elite. Nathaniel Reed surveyed his botanical gardens from the terrace, watching guests admire the rare specimens he'd collected from around the world. At 40, with a fortune built on revolutionary water conservation technology, he'd mastered the art of hosting these networking events while remaining emotionally distant from them. Extraordinary party. "Nate," said a venture capitalist, clapping him on the shoulder. "The botanical collection alone must be worth millions." Nathaniel nodded politely. "It's not about their monetary value." His gaze drifted to the Japanese maple grove, its crimson leaves catching the golden hour light. The gardens were his sanctuary, not an investment portfolio. The conversation shifted to market projections, but Nathaniel's attention was drawn to a commotion near the koi pond. Security was approaching someone, a woman in a simple dress, mud-stained at the hem, her feet bare and dirty as if she'd walked miles. Her auburn hair hung in damp waves around her pale face. "Sir," his head of security spoke into his earpiece. "We have an uninvited guest. Should we remove her?" Before Nathaniel could respond, the woman looked up, her eyes meeting his across the garden. Something in her gaze, a raw desperation mingled with dignity, made him pause. "Wait," he said quietly. "I'll handle this." As he approached, conversations hushed. The woman stood perfectly still, like another rare specimen in his collection, out of place yet somehow belonging. "This is private property," he said, gentle but firm. "I know." Her voice was steady despite her disheveled appearance. "I just needed somewhere beautiful today. Somewhere alive." She gestured to the surrounding flowers. "I used to catalog specimens like these. Before everything changed," recognition dawned slowly. "Dr. Olivia Bennett," he said. "From the university's Botanical Research Department." A flicker of surprise crossed her face. "You remember? Julian spoke highly of your work." The name of his brother hung in the air between them. Her composure wavered. "I didn't think anyone would recognize me. It's been almost a year since the expedition." Nathaniel finished for her. The expedition his brother had funded, the one from which Julian never returned. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. "Sir?" "She's a guest," Nathaniel said firmly, then turned back to Olivia. "Why come here today of all days? The university cut our funding. They're closing the research facility Julian helped build." She looked down at her bare feet. "I walked through your gardens last week during public hours. Today I just couldn't stay away. Everything I've worked for is gone, and these plants—" Her voice caught. "These plants were the last thing he cared about before he left." Nathaniel was acutely aware of the stares, the whispers. His carefully cultivated image as the untouchable tech mogul was being challenged by this unexpected connection to his past. "Come with me," he said quietly, gesturing away from the crowd. He led her through a glass door into a climate-controlled greenhouse filled with specimens from the Amazon, the region where Julian had disappeared. Olivia's breath caught as she recognized several plants she'd helped classify. "Julian sent these back before—" Nathaniel didn't finish the sentence. "I've maintained them." Olivia touched a broad leaf reverently. "They're thriving. Why did you really come here, Dr. Bennett?" She met his eyes, vulnerability and determination mingling in her gaze. "I didn't come for charity or pity. I came because these plants are the last meaningful work I did, and tomorrow they're locking the university greenhouse. I just wanted to be somewhere that still values what Julian and I believed in." Nathaniel studied her, this brilliant botanist reduced to crashing parties, yet still maintaining her dignity. He recognized something in her grief that mirrored his own carefully hidden pain. "What if you didn't have to say goodbye to your work?" he asked finally. "What do you mean?" "I have resources. The gardens need a scientific director." "I don't want your guilt," she said sharply. "This isn't about guilt," he replied, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. "It's about preserving something important, to science, to Julian's memory, to both of us." Outside, the party continued. But in that greenhouse, surrounded by living monuments to a shared loss, something shifted between them. Not romance, Not yet, but recognition. Two people who had lost the same person in different ways, finding unexpected common ground in the aftermath of grief. Forgotten blooms. The research greenhouse became Olivia's domain within a week. Nathaniel had converted a guest cottage on the estate grounds into her living quarters. Though she'd initially protested the arrangement, "I can find my own place," she'd insisted, standing in the doorway of the cottage with its vaulted ceilings and wraparound windows. The commute to the greenhouse would be impractical, Nathaniel had replied, his tone businesslike. "And the board approved your salary package. This is simply practical." Now, a month into her role as scientific director of the Reed Botanical Preservation Institute, Olivia cataloged specimens in the Amazon greenhouse. Her fingers moved deftly, measuring leaf spans and documenting growth patterns. The scientific routine grounded her when memories threatened to pull her under. "The philodendron verrucosum is thriving," she noted into her recorder. "Growth rate exceeding expectations by 17%. "He always said you had a gift," came Nathaniel's voice from the doorway. Olivia startled, nearly dropping her measuring calipers. Nathaniel stood watching her, his usual tailored suit replaced by casual attire, dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. Without the armor of formal business wear, he looked younger, more approachable. "You should announce yourself," she said, recovering. "Some of these specimens are sensitive to sudden movements. My apologies to the plants." A hint of a smile crossed his face. "And to you." Olivia set down her tools. "Did you need something?" "I brought Julian's field journals." He held out a stack of leather-bound books. "I thought they might help with your research." Olivia stared at the journals, her heart racing. Julian's handwriting, his observations, his thoughts, preserved on those pages. "I haven't been able to read them," Nathaniel admitted. "But they shouldn't sit in storage." Olivia accepted them with trembling hands. "Thank you." She hesitated. "Would you like to stay while I look through them? He was your brother, after all." Something vulnerable flashed in Nathaniel's eyes before he masked it. "I have meetings." "Of course." She nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. Their interactions had been strictly professional since that first night, as if both were afraid to acknowledge the strange connection that had brought them together. After he left, Olivia opened the top journal. Julian's familiar handwriting filled the pages with scientific observations interspersed with personal reflections. One entry from 2 years ago caught her attention. "Introduced Olivia to Nate today. Two brilliant minds, completely different approaches to the world. Olivia sees the poetry in science. Nate sees only practical applications. Wish they could understand each other better. They're the two most important people in my life, and they barely exchanged 10 words." Olivia closed the journal, remembering that brief meeting. She'd been focused on convincing Julian's wealthy brother to fund their expedition. Nathaniel had been cold, questioning the practical applications of their research. Julian had mediated, as always. What Julian hadn't known was that Nathaniel had privately funded the expedition anyway, despite his public skepticism. She'd only learned this after Julian's disappearance, when Nathaniel had flown to Brazil himself to lead the search efforts. The greenhouse door opened again. This time it was Harrison Wells, Nathaniel's chief of staff, a tall, perpetually anxious man who regarded Olivia with barely concealed suspicion. "Ms. Bennett," he said stiffly. "Mr. Reed asked me to deliver these." He handed her a folder containing university documents, the deed to the university greenhouse and its contents, now transferred to the Reed Institute. "He bought the university greenhouse?" Olivia asked, astonished. "Mr. Reed makes strategic acquisitions when necessary," Harrison replied, "though I advised against this particular investment." "You don't approve of me being here," Olivia observed. Harrison's professional veneer cracked slightly. "Mr. Reed has spent years building a reputation for emotional detachment. It's protected him from those seeking to exploit his wealth and position. Then you arrive, with your connection to Julian, and suddenly he's making impulsive decisions." "I never asked for any of this," Olivia said firmly. "Perhaps not intentionally?" Harrison straightened his tie. "But grief makes people vulnerable. His and yours." After Harrison left, Olivia sat among the plants, surrounded by reminders of Julian. The journals, the specimens, and now the rescued university collection. It was overwhelming. Nathaniel's generosity and his distance, the weight of Julian's absence, and her own uncertain future. That evening, she found herself wandering the main gardens. The day visitors had gone, leaving the paths quiet under the fading light. Near the Japanese maple grove, she discovered a small stone bench partially hidden by foliage. Sitting there was Nathaniel, staring at a small pond where koi fish created ripples in the still water. "I'm sorry," she said, turning to leave. "I didn't mean to intrude." "It's your garden too now," he replied without looking up. "Julian designed this section." Olivia hesitated, then sat beside him, leaving space between them. "I didn't know he was interested in landscape design." "There's a lot about him you didn't know," Nathaniel said, then winced at his own tone. "I'm sorry. That was unfair." "No, you're right." Olivia watched the fish create patterns in the water. "We worked together for 3 years, but there were parts of his life he kept separate." "He was good at compartmentalizing," Nathaniel agreed. "Work, family, relationships, all in their proper boxes." "Unlike us," Olivia said softly. "Here we are with everything messily spilling over." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the careful distance they'd maintained dissolved. "I read what he wrote about our first meeting," Olivia admitted. "In his journal." Nathaniel looked away. Julian was an optimist. He thought everyone could get along if they just understood each other's perspectives. "And you don't?" "I've built my life on understanding that people have conflicting interests. It's rarely personal. Is that why you keep your distance? From me, from your guests at the party, from everything except these plants?" Nathaniel stood abruptly. "It's getting late." As he walked away, Olivia called after him. "He wouldn't want either of us to be alone with our grief." Nathaniel paused but didn't turn around. "Sometimes, Dr. Bennett, what Julian wanted isn't possible anymore." Watching him disappear down the path, Olivia realized that beneath his composed exterior, Nathaniel Reed might be even more broken than she was. Roots and thorns, the summer heat transformed the greenhouse into a tropical jungle. Olivia had expanded her research team to include 3 graduate students, all former colleagues from the university. The Reed Institute was gaining recognition in botanical circles, with Olivia's name appearing once again in scientific journals. On the surface, she was rebuilding her life. Beneath it, the roots of grief still twisted through her heart. "Dr. Bennett," called Thomas, her most promising student. "The samples from Ecuador arrived." Olivia hurried to help unpack the precious cuttings. As they worked, she noticed Nathaniel watching through the glass wall separating the greenhouse from his office. Their interactions remained formal despite the occasional moment of connection. She'd come to understand that his distance wasn't personal. It was protective. Later that afternoon, she knocked on his office door, research proposal in hand. "Enter," he called, not looking up from his computer. "I need your signature on the expedition funding," she said, placing the document before him. His head snapped up. "Expedition?" "To complete Julian's work," she explained. "There are at least 30 undocumented species in the region he was exploring." Nathaniel's expression hardened. "No, no," Olivia repeated, stunned. "But the research is not worth the risk." He pushed the proposal back toward her. "Find another project." "This was Julian's life's work," she insisted. "You can't just dismiss it." "Julian is dead because of that work," Nathaniel snapped, his composure cracking. "The region is unstable. The terrain is treacherous. I won't fund another expedition that might—" He stopped himself. Olivia stared at him, understanding dawning. "That might cost another life, my life?" Nathaniel turned to the window, his shoulders rigid. "The Institute's focus will remain on preservation of existing specimens and laboratory research. You don't get to decide how I honor his memory," Olivia said quietly. "As long as you're using my resources, I do." His tone was final. Olivia slammed the door on her way out, fury burning through her veins. For weeks, she'd been careful with Nathaniel, respecting his boundaries, his grief. But this paternalistic decision crossed a line. That evening, she sat on the cottage porch, Julian's journals spread around her. She'd been through them all now, following his scientific journey and personal reflections. One passage kept drawing her back. Nate called again to warn me about the political situation here. Always the protector. What he doesn't understand is that discovery requires risk. The same caution that made him a successful businessman makes him miss the beauty of uncertainty. I wish he could see what I see just once. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Nathaniel standing there, holding a bottle of wine and wearing an expression that might have been apologetic on anyone else. "Peace offering?" he asked. Olivia considered shutting the door in his face but stepped aside instead. "I'm still angry." "I know." He entered, looking out of place in her modest living space. "But I brought the expedition files. The complete ones." He placed a thick folder on her coffee table. "Including the search and recovery reports." Olivia's anger faltered. "You never told me what really happened." "I didn't want to burden you with the details." Nathaniel poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to her. "But if you're determined to continue his work, you should know everything." They sat on opposite ends of her sofa as Nathaniel recounted the search for Julian. How he'd chartered helicopters, hired local guides, and spent weeks in the jungle himself. How they'd found Julian's equipment but no trace of him. How the political unrest had forced them to abandon the search after a month. The authorities concluded he likely fell into one of the river gorges during a storm. Nathaniel finished, his voice hollow. "The currents would have carried him downstream for miles." Olivia wiped away tears. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because watching you rebuild your career, your passion for the work you shared with him, it's been the only good thing to come from his death." Nathaniel's gaze was direct, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "I didn't want to taint that with the ugliness of how we lost him." "And the expedition proposal?" "I can't lose someone else to that place," he admitted quietly. "Especially not you." The implication hung between them, that she had become important to him, beyond her connection to Julian. "I never thanked you properly," Olivia said after a long silence. "For the search efforts, for creating this institute, for giving me a second chance. I didn't do it for thanks. Why did you do it then?" Nathaniel stared into his wine glass. "Julian always said I tried to solve emotional problems with practical solutions. I suppose this was my attempt to fix what couldn't be fixed." "Some things can't be fixed," Olivia agreed. "But they can be grown around, like a tree incorporating a wound into its trunk." Something shifted in Nathaniel's expression. A softening, a recognition. "Is that what we're doing? Growing around our wounds?" "I think so," Olivia said softly. "And maybe that's enough." They talked late into the night, sharing memories of Julian that had been too painful to voice before. When Nathaniel finally left, the air between them had changed, the sharp edges of grief dulled by understanding. The distance narrowed by shared vulnerability. The expedition proposal remained unsigned, but Olivia no longer felt the urgent need to prove herself through risk. There were other ways to honor Julian's memory, ways that might heal rather than reopen wounds. Seasons change. Autumn transformed the Reed estate into a canvas of crimson and gold. Olivia found Nathaniel in the Japanese maple grove one crisp morning, a rare day when he wasn't buried in meetings or traveling for business. The board approved the educational outreach program, she told him, sitting beside him on what she now thought of as their bench. "We'll host the first school group next week." "Harrison is concerned about security," Nathaniel replied, though his tone suggested mild amusement rather than objection. "Harrison is concerned about everything," Olivia countered with a smile. "But exposing children to botanical science fulfills our non-profit mission and gives you a chance to inspire the next generation of scientists." Nathaniel glanced at her, warmth in his gaze. Julian would have loved that. The ease with which they now spoke of him marked how far they'd come. Julian's memory remained central to their connection, but it was no longer the only thing between them. Over the past 3 months, their relationship had evolved. Weekly research updates became dinners in Nathaniel's study. Formal emails became text messages about interesting specimens or articles. The careful distance had gradually disappeared, replaced by a comfortable companionship neither had expected. "I've been thinking about the Ecuador project," Nathaniel said, surprising her. "Not the expedition, but the conservation initiative." Olivia perked up. "The one to establish a protected research area?" "I've been in talks with their environmental minister." Nathaniel handed her his tablet, showing a proposal bearing both their names. "We could fund a permanent research station. Local scientists would do the field work, with you directing research remotely." Olivia scanned the document, emotions welling up. "This addresses everything in my original proposal, just with a different approach." "A safer approach," Nathaniel emphasized, "but one that still honors the work." Impulsively, Olivia hugged him. For a moment, he stiffened, physical affection still foreign to him, but then his arms came around her, tentative but sincere. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. When they pulled apart, something had shifted again, the platonic nature of their relationship suddenly less certain. That evening, as Olivia prepared for their dinner meeting about the Ecuador project, she found herself considering her appearance more carefully than usual. She chose a deep green dress that brought out her eyes, applying makeup for the first time since before Julian's death. Thomas noticed as she left the greenhouse. "Hot date, Dr. Bennett?" he teased. "Budget meeting," she corrected, but her blush betrayed her. Thomas grinned. "About time. The greenhouse staff has a betting pool on when you two would figure it out." "Figure what out?" Olivia demanded. "That you and Reed look at each other the same way, when you think the other isn't watching." Flustered, Olivia hurried to the main house, Thomas's words echoing in her mind. Was it possible? Had she developed feelings for Nathaniel? And more incredibly, did he return them? Dinner was served in Nathaniel's private dining room, a space more intimate than his formal dining hall. Candlelight softened the room's masculine design, reflecting in the crystal glasses and silverware. "You look beautiful," Nathaniel said as she entered, his usual composure slipping to reveal genuine appreciation. "Thank you," she replied, suddenly shy. "The Ecuador proposal is remarkable. How long have you been working on it?" "Since our argument," he admitted, holding her chair. "I realized I was making decisions based on fear rather than logic. That's not who I am." "And who are you, Nathaniel Reed?" Olivia asked softly. "Beyond the billionaire, beyond Julian's brother?" He considered this as he poured the wine. "I'm someone who built walls to protect myself after losing everyone I cared about. My parents, then Julian, and now—" His eyes met hers across the table. "Now I'm someone who's afraid those walls might cost me something important." The honesty of his answer caught her off guard. Before she could respond, Harrison appeared with an urgent business matter requiring Nathaniel's attention. "I'm sorry," Nathaniel told her, genuine regret in his expression. "This will take an hour at most." "It's fine," she assured him. "I'll wait in the conservatory." The glass-enclosed room adjoining the dining area housed Nathaniel's collection of rare orchids. Olivia wandered among them, reflecting on how much had changed in 6 months. From crashing his party barefoot and desperate to directing a prestigious research institute. From grieving Julian alone to sharing that grief with the one person who understood it completely. And now, this new feeling, this tentative hope that there might be something more between them. She was examining a particularly beautiful phalaenopsis when Nathaniel returned. "Crisis averted," he said, joining her. "I apologize for the interruption. The orchids kept me company," she replied. "This collection is extraordinary." "Another of Julian's influences," Nathaniel admitted. "He convinced me to start collecting them after a trip to Thailand." "You really did love him," Olivia said softly. "Despite your differences." "He was the better of us," Nathaniel said, his voice tight with emotion. "More generous, more passionate about life." "He would be proud of what you've built here," Olivia assured him. "Of how you've carried on his work through the Institute." "Through you," Nathaniel corrected. "You're the heart of this place, Olivia. You always have been, from the moment you walked into that party." He stepped closer, the candlelight from the dining room casting shadows across his features. "I've been afraid to acknowledge what's happening between us. It felt disloyal somehow." "To Julian?" Olivia asked, her heart racing, to his memory, to what he meant to both of us. Nathaniel's gaze was intense, vulnerable, but I think he would understand. He always wanted the people he loved to be happy. The word loved hung between them, weighted with meaning. "Are you happy, Nathaniel?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "For the first time since losing him, yes." His hand found hers among the orchids. "Because of you." The kiss, when it came, felt like coming home and embarking on a journey all at once. Gentle at first, then deepening with months of unspoken emotion. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing unevenly. The world shifted irrevocably around them. "I never expected this," Olivia confessed, her forehead resting against his. "Neither did I," Nathaniel replied. "But Julian always did say life's most beautiful discoveries happen when you least expect them." In the greenhouse of rare and precious things, they had become the most unexpected bloom of all, a relationship growing from the soil of shared grief into something entirely new and hopeful. Perennial Growth 1. Year after Olivia had crashed Nathaniel's garden party, the Reed Botanical Institute hosted a gala of its own. The gardens were illuminated with thousands of fairy lights, transforming the grounds into an ethereal wonderland. Scientists, conservationists, and philanthropists mingled among the exotic plants, celebrating the Institute's remarkable first year. Olivia stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Nathaniel deliver his speech about the Ecuador Conservation Project. He'd changed in the past year, the cold, distant billionaire replaced by a passionate advocate for environmental preservation. The walls he'd built had gradually come down, not just with her, but with the world. And none of this would have been possible without our scientific director. "Dr. Olivia Bennett," Nathaniel concluded, his eyes finding hers in the crowd. "Her vision and dedication have transformed not just this institute, but my understanding of what's truly valuable." Applause rippled through the audience as Olivia made her way to the podium. She'd grown comfortable with public speaking again, her confidence restored along with her scientific reputation. "Thank you," she began, surveying the crowd. "A year ago, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. My research, my purpose, my future." Her gaze shifted to Nathaniel. "What I discovered instead was that loss, like nature itself, is never the end of the story. It's simply part of the cycle of growth." After the speeches, as guests explored the illuminated gardens, Nathaniel found her near the koi pond. "Successful evening," he said, slipping his hand into hers. The gesture, once unthinkable for the man who avoided all physical contact, now came naturally. "The Ecuador funding exceeded our goals," Olivia agreed, "and the university partnership will bring 10 new researchers next semester." "I wasn't talking about the fundraising," Nathaniel said softly, turning her to face him. "I meant us. This, everything we've built together." Olivia smiled, understanding. "We've come a long way from me crashing your party barefoot." "I've been thinking about that night," Nathaniel admitted. "How close security came to turning you away. How easily we might have missed each other." "I don't believe that," Olivia said. "Julian connected us for a reason, even if it took us time to understand what that reason was." Nathaniel led her away from the party, following a path through the Japanese maples to a secluded garden she'd never seen before. In the center stood a glass pavilion, filled with the rarest specimens from their collection. Lights illuminated the structure from within, creating a glowing sanctuary. "What is this place?" Olivia asked, amazed. "Your anniversary gift," Nathaniel explained, opening the glass door. "I've been working on it for months. Inside, each plant had been arranged to create a living timeline of their journey, specimens from Julian's expedition, from her university research, from their Ecuador project. In the center stood a small table with a velvet box. "Nathaniel," Olivia began, her voice catching. "Before you open that," he said quietly, "I want you to know something. What began as an obligation to Julian's memory has become something entirely separate and precious on its own. My feelings for you aren't about him anymore." "I know," she whispered, touching his face. "Mine aren't either." She opened the box to find not a ring, as she'd half expected, but a key. "What's this for?" "The Ecuador Research Station," Nathaniel explained. It's completed. I thought we might visit next month together. See Julian's work fulfilled and then, Olivia prompted, heart racing. And then start our own chapter, he finished, whatever that might be. As they stood surrounded by plants from around the world, living testaments to resilience and adaptation, Olivia understood that grief hadn't diminished their capacity for joy. It had deepened it. A year ago, I walked into your party because I had nowhere else to go, she said softly. I just wanted a place to breathe when everything was suffocating me. And now? Nathaniel asked, his arms encircling her waist. Now I stay because this is where I want to be, she replied simply. Not because of Julian, not because of the Institute, because of you. Outside, the party continued, guests admiring the illuminated gardens without realizing that the true miracle was happening in a quiet glass pavilion. Two people who had lost the same person finding something unexpected in each other. Not replacement for what was gone, but something entirely new. Julian's journal sat on a pedestal near the door, open to his final entry. The most beautiful thing about nature is its capacity for renewal. After forest fires, volcanoes, floods, life always returns, transformed but undefeated. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson in all my research, that endings are never really endings at all. As Nathaniel and Olivia stepped back into the light of the party, hand in hand they carried that truth with them, that from the ashes of loss, with patience and care, the most unexpected and beautiful things can grow. Their story hadn't begun with love at first sight or fairy tale perfection. It had started with grief, continued through healing, and blossomed into something real and lasting, not despite their scars, but because of them. They had learned what Julian always knew, that the most precious gardens are those that survive the harshest seasons.